There's some big news in Seattle. You're a Niners guy. You're a Niners reporter. I'm a Niners fan. Blake has now become a pseudo Niners fan. I know they're now his second favorite team, but there's big news in Seattle in regards to Russell Wilson. So let's talk about it. Blake, I'm going to start with you. Will Seattle trade Russell Wilson this year?
Not this year. I think he'll play this year, but I don't think he'll finish his contract. I think no chance he'll finish his contract. I think it's kind of like the Tom Brady situation that we saw in Tampa Bay a few years ago, where he's like, "Oh, I don't want to be here," and there was stuff about him leaving, and everyone's like, "Oh no, that's crazy." Like Tom Brady would not leave the Patriots, and he ended up leaving. And I think we're going through the same sort of motions now with Russell Wilson. That no way he'll actually leave, or no way they would actually consider trading him. But this team has not been to the NFC Championship game since 2014. They haven't had the most success in the postseason, and it's kind of the Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson relationship is not looking like the best. I don't think he'll be traded this year, but I do think he'll be traded next year or in the future.
Grant?
Okay. So I'm just looking. He has a no trade clause, correct? But he'll waive
I'm not
it.
sure about that.
I think he would waive it for the Bears.
It says Russell Wilson might waive his no trade clause for these 14. That's what it says in the LA Times. And the teams are the Raiders, the Cowboys, the Saints, and the Bears. What if the Cowboys did like a sign and trade deal where they sign Dak Prescott and trade him to Seattle for Russell Wilson straight up? Is that something that could happen?
So much dead cap for the Seahawks.
So much dead cap.
Point. They would be paying like $60 million for quarterbacks on and off their roster.
Well, let me see what trading Russell Wilson after June 1 would do. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic.
Okay. Then I'll give my take on this. So
yeah, what do you think,
I actually think this is a different situation. So I like your comparison to Brady. I'm going to compare it to a different Hall of Fame.
$13 million post June 1.
So that's your quarterback, Blake, Aaron Rodgers. I think this is similar to Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers. This is Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson. I think it's just gotten stale. This is what happens when you have a highly paid Hall of Fame type quarterback, a coach. I think Pete Carroll's a much better coach than Mike McCarthy, full disclosure on that. But when you're repeatedly doing the same thing, like the Seahawks have built the same different iterations of the same type of team and gone and lost in the playoffs every single year. And when you're repeatedly doing the same thing without change, this is what happens, because everybody's got an ego and everybody wants their career to be different from just going to the playoffs and losing. Who's contented with that? Certainly not Russell Wilson, certainly not Pete Carroll. So I think this year it's all going to stay intact. They're going to run it back one more year. I'm assuming it's going to be more of the same. They'll be a 10-7, 11-5, 11-6 type team. They'll make it to the playoffs. They'll lose, and I think they'll fire Pete Carroll, and I think they'll bring in a new voice for Russell Wilson, because ultimately it's going to be Russell Wilson versus Pete Carroll, and I think you got to choose Russell Wilson just because Pete Carroll, I think, is the oldest coach in the NFL. You don't know how much longer he himself is going to be coaching, so I think that's how this is going to end up.
It seems to me that the Seahawks may have some incentive to trade him because, like you just said, they've tried it so many different ways with Russell Wilson, and they can't get it done. And I think they could look at it as like, well, we're just paying too much for a quarterback. When we won a Super Bowl and made it to a Super Bowl, our template was way different. We weren't spending on quarterbacks. We were spending on everything else, and we had a young quarterback who was inexperienced and athletic, and it worked for us. Maybe we can get back to that template. And it seems to me, so any trade they do would either bring back probably a young quarterback on a rookie deal. So any of these teams would have to help them do that. Can the Raiders help them do that? No. Can the Cowboys help them do that? Not maybe. Can New Orleans? No. Can Chicago? Not really.
No.
So maybe they got to. I mean, it seemed to me like maybe if they traded him for Kyler Murray a couple of years ago, that'd be kind of what they're looking for. But they can't do that right now. Maybe they'll have to wait another year.
But do you think, Grant, that it's more of a Pete Carroll problem or a Russell Wilson?
You know how I feel about expensive quarterbacks.
I do. That's fair.
I think it's a Russell Wilson problem. He makes too much money, and he's upset about not getting pass protection. Well, dude, I'll tell you why you ain't getting pass protection. That's a dollar store offensive line. It has been since you've been making $30 million a year. If you want to have a right tackle, pay for it yourself, basically, by giving some money back.
So, Grant, here's why I disagree with your scenario. And it's because of the way Seattle won the first 2 times. In my opinion, I mean, I wasn't around for the 2000 Ravens. I was born a year before. That's the greatest defense I've ever seen. The 2013 Seattle Seahawks. Never seen a defense that good. It was like they were choking teams to death. Like, teams could not move the ball against them. The Seattle scheme was new. And because with the single high playing match 3 zone, all of that, like, that was new. And I've never seen anything like that. I don't think, even if they get rid of Russell Wilson, get a buttload of picks, they're going to be able to redo that. And here's why. Because I think a lot of Pete Carroll's early career success in the draft is similar to why Jimmy Johnson had success after the Herschel Walker trade. He was in college. All those players he drafted, Earl Thomas, Russell Cohn, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, were guys he recruited out of high school. So he knew what they were. He knew what their families were like. He knew all of those things. So he was confident drafting them. He's not going to be able to recreate that draft success from 2010 and 2011. No way. So I say you got to choose Russell Wilson and you got to run it back. And the one thing I will say, you asked the question, Blake, on who's the problem. The problem in Seattle this year, at least, was Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson takes too many sacks. Russell Wilson passes up too many open throws. Russell Wilson's play style is a genuine problem, and his height is a problem. Is he the biggest problem in Seattle? No, but this year I didn't think the offensive line was the problem. The offensive line was probably the best in Seattle it's been in a few years this year.
No. The offensive line is not good in Seattle. No. That's not true.
It was better this year, Grant, than it's been in the last 3 years, Grant. It was better this year.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Who said, did I say it was good? I didn't say it was good. I said it was better this year than it's been in the last 3 years. He's passed up open throws. That's a problem.
Yeah, but saying like, one crap is better than other crap is they're both crap. There's been a crap off.
I didn't think
right
it was
tackle?
terrible.
Who's their right tackle?
I don't know.
Dwayne Brown's
it's Art Shell's son. It's terrible, Vish. And yeah, but you're right though. You just said that Russell Wilson is a big part of the problem. Yeah, he is a big part of the problem. He makes too much money. He holds the ball too long. He brings a lot of these sacks on himself. And the offensive line is terrible on top of that. Yeah, dude, you're the problem. Trade that fool. If you could get the number 1 pick, yeah. But it seems like Jacksonville doesn't want to trade him for the number 1 pick. I'd rather have Trevor Lawrence too. If you're not going to get the number 1 pick for Russell Wilson, maybe you just got to wait a year because he is worth a lot. He should be. He's a hell of a player.
So you're more on the Russell Wilson. It's not Pete Carroll and more Russell Wilson, Grant? I
think Russell Wilson making $35 million a year, I don't think you can win a Super Bowl that way. I think Pete Carroll can win a Super Bowl his way. He's not going to be as good of a drafter as he was 10 years ago. Vish is right about that. But you don't have to be as good of a drafter if you're paying $900,000 on your quarterback. That's the whole point. They're terrible at drafting in Seattle. If they had that young quarterback, they could actually be big spenders in free agency and, not be dependent on their terrible drafting ability.
Okay, but here's my question to you. So do you think Russell Wilson would benefit from not having Pete Carroll, or would Pete Carroll benefit more from not having Russell Wilson? Because I would say Russell Wilson would benefit a whole lot more than not having this run on first and second down all the time, take big shots, not throw the ball 30 times a game, because I think Russell Wilson definitely could do that. And he's one of the few top 5, top 7 quarterbacks that really hasn't been given that chance as the same guys as Rodgers has or Mahomes, where they are asked to throw the ball that much instead just handing it off to the injured running back corps that they have with Travis Homer, Chris Carson for like 3 games, Rashad Penny. Why'd they take him in the first? I don't know. And
didn't they try to let Russell Wilson cook this year? Wasn't that what this year was about? Let him pass. And it didn't work.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I think that they tried to let him. The problem with Russell Wilson is that his height is a problem. He can't see and make certain throws over the middle of the field. I've not seen a quarterback pass up more open 10-yard dig routes than Russell Wilson in my life. He just doesn't make those throws. Right, because he's 5'10". That's the point. And so the guys like the Mahomes, I think that's the thing. Mahomes has made everybody think because his process is so good that you can just drop back any top 5 quarterback and make him throw all the time. I think they have the right formula for Russell Wilson, given his size, given his limitations in terms of how he sees the field and all that. I still think you can win a Super Bowl with Russell Wilson. Absolutely. He's a top 5 quarterback. But I think that the way you need to use him always has to start from a strong run game. Now, you can be creative in when you throw the ball. It can be more on first down and all of that. But I think that Russell Wilson always needs a strong run game.
So, Vish, just come out and say it. You think they should fire Pete Carroll and hire who?
Anybody. I mean, whoever
Anybody.
they think, whoever Russell Wilson wants, hire him.
Whoever Russell Wilson wants, that's what they should do.
Hire him, yeah. Because ultimately, I don't think they're recreating the success they had before Russell Wilson. I think their best case scenario is to continue to be what they are they've been the last 4 years and retry it and just do that with Russell Wilson being happy. I mean, do you see a scenario? Because I think trading Russell Wilson and trying to recreate that is it's grounds to make your franchise go from being here and you were here, now you're here to done.
Well, you wouldn't trade him for like the 18th pick in the draft. I mean, you trade him for
but even
the number one
even
pick.
If
they would not
trade minimum. Yeah, I don't think he would. If you're trading him for the number one pick, it's a draft where the number one overall pick isn't Trevor Lawrence or some or a quarterback that
then the number two, a top 3 pick. Otherwise, Russell Wilson isn't worth that. I thought people thought he was great. I thought you just said he was top 5.
He's absolutely worth that. He's a top 5 quarterback. Right. The question is,
the Jets wouldn't trade number 2 for him?
Probably not. No,
I don't think they would.
I don't think they would.
You think the Jets feel better about Zach Wilson than Russell Wilson?
I think they feel better about Zach Wilson making pennies on the dollar than they do with Russell Wilson. Like, I know we had this conversation before with, the cheap quarterbacks is better. There is moments where that cheap quarterback blows chunks, and you have Trubisky, you have Darnold, you have a bum at quarterback, and then
that could be Zach Wilson.
I mean, I like Wilson. I like Wilson.
Yeah, but wait a minute, Grant. I'm actually not even understanding your point because, okay, you can trade him for the number 3 overall pick. There's a likely scenario that Seattle drafts the Trubisky or the Darnold or whatever. Yeah, that's my point. That's why with Russell, and it doesn't matter. You can stack the team with Mitchell Trubisky. You're not having a better team than what you have currently with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, no, I'm saying. I just said I think the Jets would trade the number 2 pick for Russell Wilson. That's all I'm saying. Should the Seahawks trade Russell Wilson for the number 2 pick? No, because I don't think Zach Wilson is worth it. But I think he's worth that, at least a number 2 pick. Maybe in another year he'd be worth number 1, but 2 is like the bottom. That's the least you would take for Russell Wilson. No, number 2 pick in the draft.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. But my point is the reason I say fire Pete Carroll, and hire whoever Russell Wilson wants is because of that reason. You don't know who you're going to draft
this year, though, right? It's already too late to do that.
It is. Yeah. But I'm saying, let's say perfect world. Russell Wilson's dead cap is not a problem for Seattle. They can move off of him. I would still fire Pete Carroll and keep Russell Wilson because if you do draft Mitch Trubisky, even if you put the 2013 Seahawks defense with Mitch Trubisky, you're not winning a Super Bowl. There's no way. The 2018 Bears defense was.
Who was the top head coach this year that got hired? Who was it?
Was it Saleh?
It was Saleh. But you wouldn't fire. You bring in an offensive coach, so you're getting who? Basically, the equivalent of.
Was Matt LaFleur the best coaching hire candidate of his hire? But he's worked with Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, so a Matt LaFleur
in the last 2 years. Yeah,
maybe
Stefanski. I don't know.
I think Pete Carroll's way better than Mike McCarthy. I think Pete Carroll's a really good coach.
I agree.
I think he is.
I agree. But this has become stale. I also think Aaron Rodgers is a lot better than Russell Wilson. And I think Russell Wilson's a Hall of Fame quarterback, first ballot, and a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. But I just think that the best way for Seattle to move on from this situation is bring something new for Russell Wilson.
I agree, Vish.
All right. We'll see what they do. I don't know. I don't. What do you think they're gonna do? How about that? What do you think they're gonna do? What's gonna happen? I'm curious.
Blake,
I think Wilson's gonna be gone. It seems like he's made it pretty clear that it's power or something along those lines where he wants to be the main vocal point. And it seems like the Seahawks aren't really willing to let that happen. And I know we've talked about Russell Wilson. He loves Chicago. I think he'll eventually end up there.
Why does he love Chicago?
Huh?
Why does he love Chicago?
He wants his career to tank.
And his wife too. His wife wants a bigger city. I think that definitely plays into it. You think his wife, Ciara, right? I don't think she likes being in Seattle. I mean, I think she'd rather be in a bigger city with her career. I think that somewhat plays into it. A little under the radar type story, but I think he likes Chicago a lot and would like to be the face of that franchise.
Well, anytime you can go play quarterback for the Chicago Bears, how do you pass up on that opportunity? I mean, it's just the ticket to Super Bowls and the Hall of Fame.
Be a good quarterback.
I don't know.
Nah, so for me, what will happen is I think they'll fire Pete Carroll. I think
next year,
because next year, and I think
so they'll just keep Russell. Okay,
it's what Russell Wilson means to Seattle. Is Russell Wilson not the best athlete Seattle's had since Ken Griffey, excuse me?
Kevin Durant.
He was there for a year.
Yeah, absolutely. Marshawn was pretty great too, but yeah.
Yeah, but I just think because of that, like ultimately, I think it'll be Russell Wilson will have the most power. I think Pete Carroll will be gone if that's the problem, because we don't even know. Like, this isn't set in stone that it's a beef between Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. It's a beef between Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. There's not been enough specificity in the reporting that the beef is specific to Pete Carroll. So we don't know.
Let me ask you this. It seems to me at this point of Russell Wilson's career, what I've seen from him is he's still a really good quarterback, but he's not as elusive as he used to be. So for him to have success, you would have to not only pay him $35 million a year, but also invest in your offensive line. And that to me means and your weapons. So that means if he's going to be on a team that he wants to be on, or a team that features him at his best, that defense that he's going to have is going to suck. And that's okay. A lot of Hall of Fame, like Peyton Manning had bad defenses and stuff. Do you think he's the kind of quarterback that if you gave him the offensive line and the weapons, like if you just kept him in Seattle, got rid of Pete, got rid of that defensive philosophy, bring in an offensive coach, beef up the offensive line, and just accept giving up 26 points a game? Can they win that way? Because that hasn't been Seattle's. They always have a really good defense. Can they win that way? Is he that good?
I don't think really any quarterback can do that. I mean, even the best of the best. I think that's impossible, but I'm saying I think they can go with and stop doing the same strategy they've been doing for the last 7 years that has won them, one or two, maybe 3 playoff games. I mean, I can't bear to watch Travis Homer run up the middle for 2 yards on first down. I just can't do it anymore, and I think you need a different philosophy. Now, I'm not saying they should just give in to every Russell Wilson demand that he makes, but I would rather have my quarterback be Russell Wilson instead of keeping Pete Carroll if I had to keep one. And I think that decision will be made.
Okay, so yeah. I disagree. I think Russell Wilson's way off base with the entire offensive line thing. I think they have it right with Russell Wilson. There's no point spending in the offensive line because his play style is going to make every offensive line worse than it is. Mm-hmm. When you run around end pockets instead of being able to step up when you have to step up and stuff, he's going to make offensive lines look worse. I mean, Tom Brady has made it work with bad offensive lines for years because he works the pocket better than anybody. And Russell Wilson doesn't manage the pocket at an elite level. So I think that even if you gave him a great offensive line, it's not going to change the ceiling of their team just because I think he doesn't manage the pocket well enough. That's just my take on it.
Okay, but his playing style does lead to – it does exacerbate the issue. But the main issue is his contract because the left guard is Phil Haynes. The center is Ethan Posich. The right guard is Damian Lewis, and the right tackle is Brandon Shell. I mean,
I think Justin Britt got hurt, right?
He's on a different.
They're on a different team, man. This team is. They just can't. They don't invest in the offensive line, and that's maybe it's partly the philosophy too. They're more invested in defense because he's a defensive coach.
Yeah, so was average. The defense wasn't like all that great this year.
That's a problem.
At the end of the year,
that's a problem. That's a problem when you're talking about Pete Carroll. Like the defensive coach, his offensive coordinator is going to be like mediocre at best. His defense needs to be special. And Pete Carroll, it almost looks like Robert Saleh is more involved, is more with the times than Pete Carroll, right?
But honestly, with their defense, I'm actually wondering because it feels like they fielded more undrafted players on their defense than anybody in terms of their defensive line. I'm actually interested in what they're investing in. Besides Bobby Wagner, I'm not sure what their team is spending money on. It's Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, and then like Tyler Lockett, Dwayne Brown. Is that who they spend their money on?
Yeah, they spend their money on like 8 players. Jamal Adams, Bobby Wagner, Russell Wilson,
Reed, right?
Tyler Lockett. That's Dwayne Brown. That's 5. That's about it.
So that's 3 out of 5 offensive players anyway.
Yep.
And DK Metcalf is going to join that group.
Yeah, he is. He absolutely is. He's going to be paid at like $17 million a year.
Yeah. And then so here's a good question from S. Thompson. What about hiring Eric Bieniemy for Russell Wilson?
What you think, Grant?
I don't know, man. Eric Bieniemy hasn't gotten any bites. It seems like there's something there with him. I don't know. He's got some weird stuff in his background from Colorado. There's some questions about his involvement in the office with Andy Reid. There's the fact that Matt Nagy freaking stinks and Doug Peterson freaking stinks. I mean, I don't know. I think there's probably other offensive coaches who were. I mean, was Eric Bieniemy good when he was at Colorado, when he wasn't with Andy Reid? I think there's a reason people haven't hired Eric Bieniemy. Beyond the reason that everyone says.
Either.
No.
Yeah,
9 points. 9 points.
Yeah.
No, someone else. I mean, that's the problem with hiring an offensive coach. That barrel is scraped to the bottom. I mean, who is the next offensive up and coming? Like Joe Brady, basically. That's what they could do. They could hire Joe Brady. So we'll see
Daboll.
Who?
The Bills offensive coordinator.
Oh, Daboll for sure.
Yeah,
okay,
Daboll.
One of those two guys. Yeah, maybe. Man. Daboll.
I think Daboll or Bieniemy would be decent fits, but ultimately, if Russell Wilson wants John Joe, who's the offensive coach for whatever, I just hire John Joe, just because I think you just gotta give Russell Wilson one chance with whoever he wants and let it fail like that. You can't let it fail without letting it go.
I wouldn't be surprised though if it is Bieniemy. Then the thought process will be, hey, Russell Wilson's almost as good as Patrick Mahomes. Why don't we just bring in Patrick Mahomes' offense and see what Russell Wilson can do? That's basically how NFL teams think about that level of depth.
We have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. That's like kind of a Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill combination, a bootleg version. So
I wouldn't be surprised if this happens. Good call, S. Thompson.